So under the tank, I started with the cooling system. And I changed to the Samco silicone hoses. You can see them in there. Because the stock hoses are extremely flimsy and they're definitely prone to failure. And I've seen a lot of them fail. These silicone hoses are extremely brute. I don't think you would ever tear these up in your lifetime. So the stock hoses, I've seen them to where they split right up the center here. And of course that's always out on the trail where you're totally screwed. Then the other issue is that the hoses are such poor quality and they break down over a pretty short period of time to where you can't get the clamps tight. So you can tighten the clamp down and just tighten and tighten until it's just squishing the hell out of it. But then you can reach up here and grab the hose and you can, rotate it. It's not tight. It's not sealing properly. And it's also prone to popping off at that point if you get the bike really hot. So I didn't want that. I'm trying to build reliability into this like I do with all my jobs, but especially this since it's going to be a long distance dual sport bike. Now you can see here that black piece in the center of the screen there, that's the thermostat housing. And I left that in on this bike. All my other bikes, I don't have the thermostat in there. I've got the bypass hose kit on them. But on this bike, it's going to be used in the wintertime in some colder temperatures. And I didn't want to have to deal with the engine not warming up properly. For you guys who have already installed a bypass kit, what I've done in the past is behind the louvers here. There's a lot of different styles of louvers. This is the 16-17 style. But you can just slide a piece of cardboard on one radiator, leave one of them open and leave the other one closed, slide a piece of cardboard behind the plastic louver and block off that radiator. Guys do that for snow biking. Guys do it for really cold weather riding. So that's an option if you have a bypass kit already installed. And let's see, back here I put on the zip tie fuel filter. So it's got a big filter in this area. And then it's got this little tiny filter. The inline filter is retained. That comes with that, but that's like what they come with stock. And then you can see it's got this O-ring here. It snaps right into the connector on the gas tank, the fuel line connector. So you don't have to splice that in or do anything like that. Comes with a nice hose clamp. That's a really slick unit for a fair price. So you can see down here that's pretty clean looking. And that's because I removed some of the smog garbage. And there's what I yanked out of there. That silver housing there, that's the I didn't take that apart, but I'm pretty sure there's a diaphragm pump in there. And this is the solenoid to turn the system on and off. And you can see there's an electrical connector right there that plugs into the wiring harness. So that plugs into that connector right there. Let's see, this connector. So that, I've tucked it up under there, but it normally hangs down lower. So anyhow, that plugs into there. So what I have is this little dongle piece. It's called a dongle, and it plugs into there, and it keeps it from throwing a code on your dash. So these little dongles, we've got them, I think they're about, I don't know, 15, 20 bucks or something. And it takes care of that issue. And some companies want to sell you these small kits where you stick a steel ball on the hose and some other Mickey Mouse stuff. Not something I wanted to do to my bike. So I completely removed that aluminum housing. And then this is, let's see, this is the part that bolts into the engine. So I just used this part for a pattern and made a little metal plate, bolted it onto the engine and sealed it with some case sealer. And then this is a little line adapter, pulls venting off of the intake. I removed that, put a bolt in there. That's just a bracket that holds this piece on. So quite a bit of garbage there. I'll show more about this later, but I also removed this stuff. I didn't like that big floppy rear tail section piece. The size of the light didn't bother me, but it just doesn't fit on anything else. So I changed that to a different style, like what's on the 17XCW 2-strokes. And also removed the turn signals front and rear. In Colorado, those are not required, so those had to go. That's the tail light, or excuse me, the license plate bracket. Removed it. This is the turn signal flasher, and then that's the ECU, which I replaced. And I'll get to that in a little bit. Oh, let's see what else I did on this side. I think that might be about it. Let's take a minute here to take a look. All right, we'll move over to the other side for now. Get a better look at the hoses over here. Let's see, put on the carbon fiber pipe guard from P3. And I don't have very good lighting here, but that's the bracket I made, or the little plate, excuse me. Super simple, took me 5 minutes. I kind of like making stuff like that. And then down here, you can see that bolt right there. That's where that brass fitting was. So I just put a 6mm bolt and copper washer and Loctited it in. Called it good. Bike's already come with a fan. And I haven't put on bolt-proof radiator guards yet because I don't know that it's necessary with this 4.1 gallon tank, because it wraps around and protects the radiators pretty well. I kind of changed the horn mounting a little bit. It came with this big complicated bracket, and so I used that same bracket and cut it down. You can see I did there. I cut it and I bent it, and then I located it onto the tabs, the bolts here that would normally hold the shrouds, the tank shrouds. And I reused those tank shroud bolts and washers, so it's kind of blurry right there, so that, because the Chevro's tank comes with some O-rings that you use to hook onto the tank shrouds, and then I hook them onto here. I'll try to show that in a later video if I remember. Also underneath the tank and seat here is a Shirai battery. The stock batteries have got a history of failing, and they're just not that strong. They don't have that good a cranking power, so I didn't want to deal with that issue since it doesn't have a Kickstarter. I also ran a little lead right here, and I use that for an electric vest, and that just runs back to the battery. You see that wire, that red wire, and then there's another wire over here for it. So, cold mornings, I use that sometimes. So here's the little magic box. Remove the stock when I put this in, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit later. But I got to tell you that this is the magic box. It makes the bike run extremely well. You don't have to mess with the TPU. I did nothing to the TPU. I just did the 2 setting points that they tell you about in the instructions, which take all of a minute. And I plugged this thing in, and it runs extremely well. In stock condition, this bike was horrible. It didn't have enough power to pull the grease string out of a duck's butt. It was absolutely horrible. And so after I unplugged it, I removed that kind of screen looking thing that they had back here. And the way you remove those is just drill a big hole in it, get a big drill bit and drill a hole, and then just take a punch and punch around what's left of that piece. So you're going to have some remnants of that, and just punch around and around on that and drive that piece in until it kind of buckles up, and then pull it out with a pair of pliers. And you can see it turned out really clean. And what I like about this is it's very quiet. So you combine this with the way they did the air boot this year, and you got a nice quiet bike. So underneath this air filter, and I'm not pulling that off right now, there's a reed valve system in there in the snorkel part of the air boot. And there's companies out there that have things to replace those reed valves. And, you know, maybe you'll gain a quarter of a horsepower, a half a horsepower or something. But you also gain a lot of noise. And I didn't want the noise. I like a nice quiet bike, especially when you're sitting on the thing for 6, 8, 10 hours a day, trying to cover some miles. All that noise will eat you up. I mean, it wears you down. Loud pipes, loud anything. You know, on a long haul day, little things will eat your lunch. An uncomfortable seat, whatever. You know, just a number of things at the end of the day wear you down. So I left that reed assembly in there. So now I'll put this tank back on and we'll move on to the next stage. Okay guys, this is just a short addendum to this video because I forgot a couple of things like I always do. And I'm also going to list all these things in the description part of the video. So I'll make a full list of what's on the bike. So I forgot to mention that it's got a Recluse EXP 3.0. That's just their basic clutch. I like all the Recluse clutches, the basic one as well as the higher dollar ones, but this clutch works just fine for what I'm doing here. And I've used the 3.0 on a lot of my bikes, and it's an excellent clutch. So I set that up with the stock Belleville washer on this bike because they already come with the heavy duty one. And bikes that don't have the heavy duty Belleville, I would recommend that. But use the low engagement spring. So if you look in the instructions in the very back, it mentions low, medium, and high engagement. I use the low engagement spring so that it comes on at a lower RPM and stays engaged down to a lower RPM on a downhill. And they already have the heavy wedges that come that way. That's one thing I forgot. Just a couple of little tidbits here. Is this billet aluminum bracket right here for mounting the mirror. So it just replaces the top clamp on your clutch master cylinder. It's a pretty slick little piece. We sell those. Of course, everything on this bike we sell, with the exception of the wheel weights. I don't have those yet. So down in there, you see those two little bolts down there. Those, all right, down in that area. Those are some extenders that we have for the odometer. Because if you want to mount your bars in the third or fourth position, the farther forward positions, the odometer gets in the way. So we sell those little brackets to move those forward. Those are made by BRP. And then right now I have the stock foot peg pins in there, but I'll be changing those to our stainless steel pins. I'm sure there'll be some other things I'll be changing along the way. And then just one little minor thing is I use the Enduro Engineering license plate bracket. I just trim it down to match the plate, just to give it a little more support so it doesn't break, so the plate doesn't crack. That seems to work real well. If I forget anything else, I'll just put it in the description right below the video, so be sure to check that section. And like I said, everything here is available at slavensracing.com. That's all for now.